Hey everyone, it's Allie, and I'm sorry to tell you that the new patch notes dropped. And I'm sorry to tell you, cuties, that I tried. I really tried. I wanted to pick a build that was going to be fun, that was going to be exciting, and that people could enjoy and play and have fun, that hopefully GGG wouldn't touch. And unfortunately, GGG ended up touching this build. You see, with the new patch notes, we got extremely buffed. I didn't expect it. But the patch notes somehow buffed our build, and we are now substantially stronger than we were before. You can now do this to a boss. And keep in mind, my gear sucks. My gear is complete garbage, and that's a tier 15 boss. So why don't we get into it and talk about how GG not only managed to not nerf us or do nothing for us, but somehow managed to buff our build by quite a large margin. Before we start with that, I do want to put something right at the start of the video just so everyone sees it and you don't miss out on this. What I'd recommend for you to do as a small additional little thing about our passive tree that we figured out was to potentially drop 3 passive points on the nodes that you're working with down here, and instead come up here to where we're picking up Blinding Strike and pick up Siphon. Originally, I was against Siphon as a way to fix our mana on kill, and I was telling people to get a mana on kill jewel, but given 2% mana on kill jewels are now 50 exalted each, I highly recommend Siphon, and I like it as a long-term addition to our build, as the 35% increased mana leech that it comes with is honestly most likely going to be necessary for the super late game of this build. Very minor addition to our tree, but please do change it, and I'll update all the modifier links below as it makes your mapping feel substantially comfier. With that out of the way, let's talk about how GGG managed to actually buff us. Well, you see, we got buffed in 3 separate ways. First off, they made Barrage an actual usable skill to where it's gone from 1 repeat to 2 repeats by default with no frenzy charges. And they have massively reduced the less multiplier on it to where with my level 17 Barrage with 20% quality on it, each repeat has gone from doing 52% less damage to only doing 2% less damage. And because we can put premeditation in there, those repeats actually end up doing more damage than your gas arrows do, making Barrage feel really good to press now. At the same time, they have also buffed Combat Frenzy. At level 18, Combat Frenzy used to be 1 charge every 6 seconds, is now 1 charge every 7.3 seconds, meaning it's very simple for us to get a lot of frenzy charges, which then allow us to abuse it with Barrage, because Barrage gains an additional repeat for each frenzy consumes. Our frenzy charge generation is going to feel so comfortable that we can now even include a charge infusion to our build, meaning we get 8% more skill speed, which is 8% more attack speed at all times. And as we found out recently, attack speed is a very good stat for this build, as it is mana cost neutral due to it not increasing your mana cost, because it also effectively increases your leech rate at the same time. We'll talk about how to deal with the spirit cost in a second, but if you are going to include charge infusion here, I would recommend to get a level 14 charge infusion. It's going to require 73 intelligence, which if you're doing what I mentioned before of getting a level 9 hypothermia and a level 14 Herald device, the Herald device is only going to cost 73 int, meaning that you don't need to change anything about your build at all. You just simply put in the charge infusion. It won't be as strong as getting a level 18 or level 20, for example, but it's up to you if you want to get more intelligence and fix it later. Charge infusion level 14 is just an immediate slot in, assuming you get the spare for it. So with all this, we now just get to press Barrage whenever you feel like it, and even if you have no frenzies, just the 2 additional casts of gas arrow that Barrage does for free, mind you. These don't even cost anything outside of the cost of pressing Barrage itself. Basically allows you to one-shot every rare you come across in just 1 button press, so all rares are now a complete joke. And you can burst bosses pretty damn heavily with this too. And given we now have a permanent additional 8% more attack speed, which you can really feel in the build, your clearing overall is just a lot comfier now. And I do want to mention here that you can do this for both the fire and the cold version of the build. This is just something that everyone should simply just include in their build, as it is just free damage. In terms of the lengths, there's actually quite a lot that we could put on Barrage. For your basic 2 support setup, I'd recommend premeditation for the 15% more damage and a second wind. That you just get to use 2 casts of it back to back if you need to. I personally found myself that the 50% less CDR on this basically doesn't matter, as if you use up 1 charge, the charge starts gaining its cooldown back without you having to use both charges. And if you do somehow find a rare that, well, ends up living for a little bit, then second one feels really good on it. For your third support, I'd recommend a perpetual charge, as it gives you a 35% chance not to consume your frenzy charges, meaning if a rare somehow lives, or if you get to a boss of frenzy charges, you get to potentially double tap it with 2 really large barrages. For your fourth socket, I'm personally running an Ingenuity to make up for some of the lost cooldown on second wind, but you can also run Arcane Tempo, as Barrage actually a spell, and the cast time of it does feel a little bit bad, and Arcane Tempo really nicely helps with that. For your Combat Frenzy, the only thing you'd want to link to it is going to be Perfusion, as the multiplier actually does not apply to Combat Frenzy, making it just a free 50% chance for additional charge, which is kind of nice. And then for Charge Infusion, we are adding nothing to it. All the modifier links will also be updated to all this, so feel free to just go in the description, go to the modifier links, and you'll see everything in there. I do also want to very quickly add in here that we also optimize the links on Gas Hero a little bit more, and that will be linked in the description below. It effectively does not change anything about how the build plays. It's just we found that some supports are actually just a little bit stronger, namely specifically running Martial Tempo, as this is just a free DPS increase with no additional cost added to it, due to, again, our new understanding of how attack speed actually works in this build. I also want to add in here that we actually found a way for us to be able to completely drop inspiration and for the build to feel completely fine without it. In my specific case, I now have 10% physical damage leeches mana, between 4% on my bow and 6% on my ring. And this is not a roll you have to find on your bow. It just so happened that my bow rolled with it. But with about 10% total, which you can potentially just get on both your rings or your amulets or through any other means, with the addition of Siphon, Mental Toughness, and Manifold Method, along with me getting a 300 PDPS bow, I ended up actually putting myself in a position where I have so much mana sustain through Siphon and through the leech itself that while clearing, I have no mana problems at all. And then on map bosses, my mana sustain feels high enough to where I can comfortably just use 1 or 2 sips of a mana flask and deal with all my mana problems. And well, given I do so much damage to map bosses now, it doesn't necessarily even matter if my mana isn't the greatest. I'm pretty sure that if I did run Inspiration, I would now be able to fully sustain my mana, but we found that that isn't really necessary outside of Pinnacle bosses, which I don't want to open that can of worms right now. I have a lot of things to say about Pinnacle bosses and the mana issues that basically every single build in the game encounters on those things. But for now, if you can get yourself to about 10% physical mana leech and pick up all the mana nodes on the tree, I would highly recommend to try dropping your inspiration and either running something like a magnified effect or maybe even the new mobility, now that it's been unbelievably buffed, as it should feel really good for clearing. You might be able to be in the position yourself where you just don't need inspiration. Now, for the final thing that we need to talk about is how to actually fit in Combat Frenzy and Charge Infusion to your build. You have a few different options about how you want to go about this. First off, as I mentioned, you should just immediately add Barrage into your build, no questions asked, no matter what. The next question basically becomes of what you want to fit in on top of that. I'd highly recommend to fit in both Combat Frenzy and Charge Infusion, as they both just make this whole combo feel a lot better. And no matter what, unless you just don't want to run Charge Infusion and would like to keep Vitality, we're going to have to drop Vitality to then make space for Combat Frenzy and Charge Infusion. To do this, you are going to need to hit one of a few breakpoints. It's all going to revolve around how many of these Herald Reservation points you want to pick up. What I'd recommend for you to do, instead of upgrading your chestplate with Spirit, as that would massively nerf your chestplate given it'd be a lot harder to get good evasion, is to instead get yourself a necklace with Spirit on it. Your options here are either 45 Spirit on a necklace, which would then allow you to not have to pick up any of these reservation nodes, 42 Spirit like I do, where I'd only have to get 1 reservation point, 39 Spirit on your necklace, where you need 2 of these points, or 36 Spirits, where you require all 3 of these nodes to make it work. It's up to you which breakpoint you want to go for, and again, you could also just get a very tiny Spirit roll and just not run Charge Infusion, but I really don't recommend that, as Charge Infusion feels really, really good to run at pretty much all times. All this will be linked in the description below, so you don't have to remember exactly what I said. So as long as you keep that in mind and get yourself a new Spirit necklace if you do want Combat Frenzy and Charge Infusion, or just completely ignore all that and just fit in Barrage, nothing else, you'll have a great time to set up, and you'll be able to one-shot rares, and you'll be able to kill unique bosses in a few seconds flat. That's all we really have for this video. I hope you cuties enjoy the new Barrage tech. I am so surprised that GG managed to buff both builds, but well, we managed to acro moment every single nerf, so that's kind of fun. And well, I'm having a great time pressing Barrage, as it's been a pretty fun skill to use for the past few hours. If you have any questions on any of this, feel free to leave a comment in the comments below, and I'd be more than happy to help you as soon as I can. I also stream on Twitch every single day, so if you'd like to ask me any questions there live, I'd be more than happy to help you. Or if you simply just want to come and be a part of our community and join all the other cuties, I'd be more than happy to see you there as well. With all that said, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll see you all in the next video.